Heiner, Uwe, Cyril, and yeah, in recent years also with Eduard. And yeah, the motivation is that yeah, we need better methods to capture plants on the field, so that we can derive also yeah, plant traits which may then be predictive for yield or indicate certain diseases or maybe some yeah, things that the plants might need, like malnutrition or water. So the objective of this core project 1 is to create time series of aligned high resolution and georeference 3D models of plants, and to then extract these features and describe their development over time, so that we better understand the plants on the field. And CP1 addresses basically 2 scales. Yeah, so one is about detailed reconstruction of single plants in the field and their plant organs, so that we may recognize such spots and track their development over time to maybe have an idea about the plant disease. And another scale that is addressed in CP1 is this larger scale mapping of traits. And yeah, this is addressed by other PhD projects within CP1. So I will focus here on the detailed reconstruction of single plants and their organs. And of course, we are not the first ones who research this area. So there is various robots in different research groups around the world, which have been used for plant phenotyping, but few of them have capabilities for high resolution plant scanning. So within the PhD project of Alex, which is called yeah, in-field 4D reconstruction, our objective is to use multiple 3D sensors and high-resolution cameras for plant scanning in the field, and then have 4D structural textured plant reconstruction. What do I mean with that? Well, 3D is clear, and then we would like to also establish correspondence over time, so that we can track the growth of a single leaf, or for example, how its shape changes, or how yeah, certain yeah, things develop, like these brown spots. I think what is extremely important and the basis of everything is a structural model of these plant organs. Yeah, so that we know sort of the skeleton of the plant, and which part is connected to which one. And we would like to describe the geometry of the plant organs on a millimeter scale, for example, with a mesh, and the textures on a sub-millimeter resolution, so that we really can recognize a lot of detail. In the future, we also plan to add more channels like multi or hyperspectral textures. And all this is then sort of a virtual plant, which can be used to compute all kinds of phenotypic features, many of which may not be known at this time, but must be discovered in other sub-projects of PhenoRob. And towards this goal, we started to develop this ground robot. So it's yeah, pretty big. And is based on the Torvald robot. So there is now this housing which yeah, shields external light a bit, and where we can place a lot of sensors. Yeah, so at this point, we use 14 high-resolution RGB cameras and 5 laser scanners. So there is another variant of this Torvald robot, which is used in CP4 for intervention for weeding, essentially. And you see also here a tiny flying robot that we recently started using to capture plants on the field. So the field of interest that we are looking at is the PhenoRob Central experiment field in Klein Altendorf, which is near to Bonn. And the sensors that we selected are these Nikon cameras. So these are 45 megapixel cameras, and these 3D scanners from Photoneo, which can measure the geometry with millimeter accuracy. In this year, we combined actually 2 cameras with the 3D sensors, so that we can also compute depths from the camera images alone. Here you see last year's version of the robot. Yeah, so at this point, we had only 1 camera combined with the 3D sensor. And we can capture point clouds and high-resolution images from multiple viewpoints. And then if we know the viewpoint and the camera calibration, we can fuse it. Yeah, so in this year, we added more cameras because if we want to establish correspondences between images, it's easier if we have a small stereo baseline. So we have stereo pairs now with the 3D sensors, and we have single cameras from intermediate viewpoints, so that it's also easier to establish correspondences between neighboring viewpoints. Yeah, so if we have like 45 degrees between viewpoints, this is easier than if we have 90 degrees. And of course, there is much larger setups for like professional movie industry to capture, for example, actors that use many more cameras. So we are on a step towards this, but not there yet. Yeah. And when we want to capture plants on the field, there is a lot of challenges as opposed to controlled lab conditions. For example, the lighting. Yeah? So the lighting constantly changes, and we must adapt the exposure of the cameras. But there is also wind. Yeah? So even on days that are not so windy, the plants are moving. And this means that we may need to use fast shutter speeds to avoid motion blur. And another challenge is that this vehicle is not totally rigid, but while it's driving across the field, it's deforming, and we must do online calibration. Fortunately, the cameras that we are using, they have an SDK from the vendor, so all parameters are programmable, and we can adjust like the ISO setting, and of course, if the ISO is too high, then this may result in noisy images, and we can adjust shutter speed. Yeah, if we have a slow shutter, then we capture a lot of light, but we may get motion blur. And if the shutter is too fast, then the photos might be too dark. There is also Aperture. Yeah, so If we have a small aperture, then we have a large depth of field, but that may also result in darker photos. So if we open the aperture, then we have a small depth of field, and this may blur the background. So we need to find a balance between these camera parameters, and Alex developed a method to choose camera parameters based on the histograms of the captured images, so that all cameras have the same parameters, and these parameters make sure that we use the dynamic range of the cameras. We also added some lighting inside the robot. So we try to exclude the sunlight, because we cannot control it, but we add some extra lighting so that we have more controlled conditions inside this measuring volume. With regards to camera calibration between the cameras, we added these Aruco markers and can detect them in the images, and make sure that we have the markers visible in multiple cameras, so that we can adjust the camera poses based on the not just once, but also while we capture the data with this bundle adjustment. So here you see some data that we captured in this way. So this is just from a single sensor, and we get quite high resolution color images and millimeter accuracy 3D measurements of the plants. But you see also, of course, that there is shadowing effects and occlusions happening. We of course capture the plants with multiple sensors, and the issue with the Photoneos is that they struggle with sunlight. So we try to exclude it using the housing, but of course this is not a totally dark chamber, and we have to trigger them one by one, which takes a few seconds, and during this time the plants may move, which sort of violates a frequently made assumption that the scene is stationary, which makes it more difficult to later fuse the data. Nevertheless, here you see some initial results of a plant scanned in this way, and we can reconstruct textured meshes with quite high resolution textures. We can also estimate surface normals, of course. Here's another example where we have aggregated the point clouds from multiple sensors. Because we had issues with the capturing time of a couple of seconds, we looked closer at stereo methods. So we started just with a single pair of Nikon cameras to see how far we could go with stereo methods. So here you see an example of the patch match stereo method. So it can reconstruct details, but it has some issues here as well. And here's another more recent method based on deep learning. This looks quite good, I would say, but it still has some issues. So this method requires supervised training on data sets with ground truth depths, and it is suitable only for binocular stereo data and not for multi-view stereo, which is the situation that we have. So Alex developed a multi-view stereo method, and yeah, that somehow bridges multi-view stereo and novel view synthesis. Yeah, so it does not require supervised depths, but it is based on input RGB views with known poses, and then it trains to generate a novel view from close by but different viewpoint. And in addition to this novel view, it synthesizes a depth image, dense depth image, and also confidence values for the depth estimation. So the pipeline looks like this. Yeah, so in contrast to other methods that sample all locations along a viewing ray to generate a pixel in a novel view, the method by Alex jumps in few jumps towards the correct depth. Yeah, so he starts with coarse resolution depth estimates, and within a few iterations refines this to high resolution RGB prediction and depth estimates. So only if the depth is correctly estimated, then the RGB value of the novel view pixel can be estimated correctly. And this is actually then the loss here, where we compare ground truths not as depths, but just as a novel image where we know the viewpoint with the output of the network. So here you see a result. Doesn't start. Okay, try again. Yeah, yeah. So always 3 neighboring viewpoints are selected, and then the method somehow interpolates between them and can reconstruct novel views and depths, and also the confidence. So blue means less confidence here of the depth estimates. Together with our PhenoRob colleagues, we also created a data set that comes close actually to my objectives of modeling the structure and the geometry in detail, but it was actually captured in the lab of a single plant with a handheld LiDAR some time ago. It has recently been published, and we annotated this data set with plant organs, which is then the basis for learning instance segmentation. Yeah, so Alex used his lattice-net approach to learn using a contrastive loss to segment the individual leaves of this data set, and then for test images we can cluster in this latent space the mappings, and then see how we segment the individual leaves here. Yeah, so that is a step towards a better understanding of the plant architecture. And with the updated ground robot this year, we went multiple times to the field and scanned multiple variants of the target plants, which are like sugar beet and maize. Yeah, so we captured different levels of the application of herbicides, as you see in these two images here. We captured different varieties of corn, for example here. Yeah, we captured also from the nearby breeding experiment some of the plants that have been grown there. A project that didn't really start yet, but it will start October 1st, is to work on scanning and reconstructing plants in the field using very small flying robots. So we selected this DJI Mini 2 copter because yeah, it's not dangerous. It's so lightweight that it's allowed to fly even above people. And it has a pretty good camera, so 12 megapixels. We can get raw images. And if you zoom in, then you can recognize a lot of detail there as well. Yeah, so we place some markers next to the plant to facilitate camera pose estimation, which then will be the basis for the reconstructions of the plant. So it's other examples, small maize plants and nearby beans. And you see here some footage of more developed sugar beet. And yeah, because we fly close to the plant, even with this 12 megapixel camera, we have a pretty good resolution. Here are some still images from yeah, sugar beet, more developed. And you see that reconstruction is becoming quite challenging here because yeah, the canopy is so dense. And yeah, for more developed maize, also some aerial shot from near canopy heights. In conclusion, yeah, this undertaking of high resolution in-field plant scanning is quite challenging due to many environmental conditions like lighting, wind, weather, and occlusions. We developed a ground vehicle with many sensors and started regular plant scans on the field. We developed initial reconstruction methods, but yeah, much work is ahead of us. And I would like to thank you for your attention.